We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insight, new style, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Monday, June 2nd, here in Seoul. I'm Song Yoo-jin, and you're watching News Generation. Joining us today is Ki Kim.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday and happy June.
Happy June, yes.
Yes, and Niall Song.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So Monday is when we zoom in on the issues that matter most to young people in Korea. Now, South Korea is just one day away from its 21st presidential election. After months of leadership vacuum, tomorrow, voters will head to the polls to decide who will lead the country for the next 5 years. So today on NewsGen, we're going to take a closer look at what our generation of voters is prioritizing as they prepare to cast their ballots. So starting off, Ki, can you give us a quick overview of this presidential election?
Sure. As you just said it, the 21st presidential election for the Republic of Korea is taking place on June 3rd, Tuesday, and that is tomorrow. And this is due to former president being impeached after his short-lived martial law imposition on December 3rd last year. Now, there are 5 candidates: Lee Jae-myung of Democratic Party, Kim Mun-so People Power Party, Lee Jun-seok of the Reform Party, Kwon Young-guk of the Democratic Labor Party, and Song Jin-ho running as independent candidates. Hwang Kyo-ahn, on the other hand, was running as an independent candidate, but then now he is supporting Kim, and he retired yesterday.
Right.
And overseas voting took place from May 28th to 25th across 223 polling stations in 118 countries, resulting in a record high turnout of 79.5%. And onboard voting, which was first introduced in 2012 for the 18th presidential election, which is for those Navy ships on extended missions, took place from 26th to 29th. And early voting took place on 29th and 30th with a turnout of 34.74%, marking the second highest early voting rate since the system was first introduced in 2014. Approximately 15.4 million out of 44.3 million eligible voters participated during the 2-day early voting period. So now we're looking for the main voting tomorrow.
Right, only the big day, June 3rd, once again, is left, the actual election day. Now, as Ki just mentioned, for those unable to vote on the day itself, early voting was held over 2 days, which were last Thursday and Friday. So I want to ask our panelists, did either of you vote early, or are you planning to cast your vote tomorrow?
Well, I did early voting on Friday during the early voting period. And one of the things I prefer doing the early voting is that I can actually go to any voting station I want, whereas for the main voting, you actually have to go to the designated place normally according to your currently registered address.
Right. For me, I am planning to go and vote before I come to work tomorrow. What about you, Niall?
I actually just have a morning show tomorrow morning, so right afterwards I have a little leeway. I can wait in line and I'll go vote tomorrow as well.
Okay. And to give you a bit more of a background on this presidential election, repeating what Ki mentioned, since former President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law last December, we've seen an incredible surge of political engagement among younger generations. We talked about this multiple times on NewsGen. We could see this active political engagement when young citizens went out to the streets, protesting, demonstrating. So in this sense, do we expect to see a strong voter turnout among young generation for this election? What would you say?
For sure. The MZers, especially those in their 20s, used to be relatively disengaged from politics for the past couple of decades. I'm not going to talk about our parents' generation who were actively involved, who fought to win this freedom and democracy here, but many felt disillusioned by the candidates or simply indifferent to the process, which was reflected in their consistently low voter turnout. But things have changed in the wake of events like the declaration of martial law and the presidential impeachment crisis. Young voters have come to recognize the weight of political participation. In fact, the percentage of people in their 20s who says they will definitely vote has increased by 9 percentage points compared to the last presidential election, which is a meaningful shift. And if you take a look at the screen now, according to the Money Today survey, those in their 20s who said they'll definitely vote were 66% last time, which I would say was relatively high, yet it jumped 9% this time to 75% for the 21st presidential election. Now that signals a growing sense of civic responsibility among the youngest voters.
Yeah, and around 30% of the voters are in their 20s and 30s, and this is a huge number. This age group tends to have a high proportion of swing voters, which means there are frequent shifts when it comes to candidate support and depending on the situation. In contrast, people in their 40s, 60s, and 70s, there's only 10% of the voters who consider themselves to be unaffiliated. For the younger voters, people in their 20s, 36% consider themselves unaffiliated, and 28% of those in their 30s consider themselves unaffiliated. As a result, a lot of the president candidates actually target this demographic with memes, parodies, lots of creative ways to engage them, get them to join in the votes.
Right, and one of the major ways these presidential candidates are trying to win over the hearts of young voters is through their key policy areas. So we're now going to break down the key policy areas that young voters are paying close attention to and what the major presidential candidates are promising in those fields. So let's start with Yuki.
Yes, so it is clear that the MZ generation primarily focused on issues that directly affect their lives, like housing, employment, and the national pension system, for example. Now, take housing, for example. For many young people today, the idea of owning a home feels almost unrealistic, and I feel that too.
Right.
And to make matters worse, incidents like rental fraud have turned the housing crisis into a deeply personal issue for many, and it's no surprise that this has become a major point of concern among MZ voters. So in response, the Democratic Party has pledged to expand policies for single-person households and young people. It promises to create integrated housing work platforms near workplaces, along with tailored public housing programs and rental subsidies for youth. Meanwhile, Kim Moon-soo of People Power Party put forward a plan to supply 200,000 homes annually, targeted at youth, newlyweds, and young families. His proposals also include establishing half-rent zones and expanding publicly supported rental housing. So both candidates are clearly trying to appeal to younger voters by addressing the core economic challenges they face every single day.
And before we move further, I just want to mention that the candidates whose pledges that we are introducing, they are the candidates from the two major parties, and they are the two candidates who are showing the strongest supporting rate in the polls leading up to today. Now, let's move on to another key policy area now.
Right. So as Kim mentioned, housing is a huge issue, and along with that, jobs remains a huge issue because for young people and the low economic growth has reduced the number of quality jobs, leading more youth to remain unemployed or inactive completely. And regarding youth unemployment, Lee Jae-myung promises to expand job-linked vocational training programs in partnership with global companies and increase job-seeking activity support allowances. And Kim Moon-soo proposes encouraging open recruitment for entry-level positions at large companies, supporting different types of startups, training 200,000 young professionals in AI and 100,000 in export and trade. So definitely going for more of the futuristic job markets and also establishing AI youth startup villages nationwide. In addition to all of this, Lee Jae-myung also proposed a 4.5-day work week, which has drawn interest from the younger generation, but it's still an ongoing debate because of its feasibility.
Right, and then we are going to move on to our last area of focus, which is also greatly related to the two key policy areas we've mentioned until now, which is financial stability, right, Ki?
Right, so financial stability, two major candidates, Lee Jae-myung, Kim Moon-soo, and also the third leading candidate, who's Lee Jun-seok of New Reform Party, have put their focus on helping young people build financial assets. So Lee Jae-myung proposed the introduction of a youth future savings plan, which includes measures to ease the burden of university tuition and expand eligibility for student loan interest exemptions. Kim Moon-soo, on his part, plans to broaden the age range for asset building programs like incentive grant and opening a special account initiatives designed to support young workers, along with expanding loans for those university students. Lee Jun-seok, meanwhile, is advocating for low-interest policy-based financial products, specifically tailored to the younger generations. So you can see all these three leading candidates recognize the urgency of helping youth achieve financial independence and long-term stability.
So a lot of promising campaign pledges made by the presidential candidates. Then as a voter yourself, I want to ask you what policy issue matters to you most personally? And besides policy, what other qualities do you consider important when choosing a presidential candidate?
Well, just like anyone else, I have to consider a lot. Financial plan for my family, of course, education for my kids, and the economy as well for my career and as a broadcaster and for my own company. And one of the important things I really look for the future president this time is uniting the country. I guess it's a phenomenon that's taking place all over the world. So it doesn't have to be binary. You know, those who are not in your shoes or politically different ideas, different point of view are still the same citizens. So hopefully the new president can embrace the diversity and bring people together, regardless of their background or beliefs. What we need now, more than ever, is leadership that unites, not divides.
So you're prioritizing which presidential candidate could have the ability to unify the country.
Exactly.
Then what's at top of mind for you, Niall?
Well, I've been married for a while, but I'm still considered a newlywed according to the policies. So I'm looking out for a lot of the family-related policies. And now that I have a child and planning on having more, definitely whichever candidate is focusing on that. And when it comes to values, I suppose this may come off as a little idealistic, but a leader who can lead by example and somebody with integrity. It really seems difficult to be able to pursue something at whatever cost, but also do it with integrity. So that's what I value.
Right. So for Niall, it's policies related to family or child caring and also a leader who has integrity. Okay, so we're now going to find out what our viewers think. We asked your viewers the question on our Arirang News YouTube channel. What do you value most when voting for your country's next leader? If we look at the results, 45% answered election pledges, followed by personal values, and then political party affiliation and career background. Okay, so after the break, we'll invite a Korean millennial who's currently living in the United States to get her take on this election. Stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Korean millennial Lee Hyunju. Welcome, Hyunju, to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me for the interview.
Thank you for joining us. So Hyunju, as our panelist Ki mentioned, the overseas voting period ran from May 20th to 25th. So we want to ask you, were you able to cast your vote? And how would you describe the overall level of interest in this presidential election among Koreans who are living abroad?
Yes, I voted at San Jose polling station, which was the closest location from where I live. And from what I saw, there seemed to be strong interest in this election among Koreans living abroad. I went on Thursday morning, a weekday, but the line was already quite long and people of all ages were there to vote. And it really showed me that even overseas, many Koreans still care deeply about what's happening back home and want to take part in shaping future.
Okay, thank you. So this might be a personal question, but when choosing a presidential candidate, what do you personally prioritize and why is that?
In general, I tend to support candidates who can represent the voices that are often left out, those of marginalized or underrepresented communities. But for this particular election, what mattered most to me was whether the candidates has a genuine commitment to restoring political and economic stability after the chaos that followed the recent uprising. And this election was held unusually early, just 3 years after the last one, and that itself speaks to the level of instability. And I remember watching so many citizens take to the streets in freezing weather to demand change, and I felt a sense of regret that I couldn't do anything at the time. So now living abroad, I see voting as the one meaningful way I can support those people and contribute to rebuilding our country. That's why this time I focused on choosing a candidate who can bring real calm and direction to our society.
All right, Hyunju, so you just mentioned why this voting was so important to you and what it represented. So why do you think voting is especially important for young people, those of us who are out there?
I think voting is one of the most powerful ways we can choose the kind of future we want and select someone who will speak for us. For young people, especially, the impact of today's political decision will last much longer. So it's even more important that we get involved now. And I also believe voting is one of the easiest and most effective ways to participate in politics, especially for young people who are often busy with studying, work, or trying to build their careers. Yes, that's why. And I want to say something like election day is just around the corner. So take a moment to think about what kind of future you want and cast your vote for the person who can help bring that future closer.
Very well said. All right, Hyunju, thank you so much for joining our show today. Hope you have a great start to a new week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, wrapping up our election special episode today, we're going to remind our viewers and also ourselves why it's so important to vote tomorrow, and also go over some things to keep in mind when we visit the voting stations.
Sure. So again, regardless of your political belief, voting is one of the fundamental rights of democracy and something that can change you, your family, and your life. So please do vote. And many now upload a post to tell you have actually exercised your rights and you voted. So that's also great. And some people do thumbs up or peace sign to show their political preference, which is okay, as this could be part of your campaign unless you are part of specific groups like public officers or military groups. You cannot take a photo of a ballot paper, and you're not supposed to damage the ballot paper, and you can't use any other stamp other than the ones that's installed within the voting booth. So please keep that in mind. Don't forget your identity with the pictures on it. And also, now we'll tell you others to be reminded of.
Right. So before we get into the guidelines of what you should and shouldn't do, I personally think voting is actually promoting and protecting democracy. And people fought and people still are fighting in other parts of the world to protect their own rights to vote. And some of us, some of our people in the past have died for this right. So I think even out of respect for that and out of gratitude of being able to do so, we should definitely all go and vote. Whoever you choose to vote for, it should reflect your views, your values, not anybody else's but your own, and that is the right we've been given. Going back to what you should and should not do, please do not take pictures inside the building of where you're casting your vote. Do not take pictures of the ballots, as he mentioned, because your vote may not count. And lastly, there are these cute images online if you want to print those and stamp it so that you can show and raise awareness about voting. Yes, definitely do that. Be cute about it. And I guess that's the younger generation's way of doing it. That's encouraged. Just don't do the things that I've mentioned before.
Right, and once again, I'd like to emphasize that voting is our privilege, our right, and responsibility. And to give our voters who do have voting rights for this presidential election, the election will take place once again tomorrow, June 3rd, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at your designated voting station. And you can check your designated voting station at the National Election Commission's official website. And that's all we have for today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow, not tomorrow, but Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. We're taking tomorrow, Tuesday, off as it's election day, a temporary holiday here in South Korea, but please stay tuned to Arirang's special coverage of the 21st presidential election. Special thanks to Ki Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Niall Song.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching and hope you have a great start to a new week. We are
News Generation.